In my view, there's nothing more urgent right now on Earth than tackling climate change. It sounds like a cliche or like a buzzword, but at the end of the day, we only have one planet and we have to protect it.
Hey everyone, this is Prashant and I'll be your host for the VC10X podcast. And today we have Nadav Steinmetz with us. Nadav is a co founder at Climate First, a next generation climate tech accelerator scaling Israeli climate innovation and paving its way to global markets. They support early stage climate tech startups with significant decarbonization potential by providing access to deep tech startup knowledge, expertise, and a global network of mentors, partners, and VCs. In this episode, we talk about Nadav's background and what led him to climate investing, why climate change is the biggest issue facing humanity right now, goal with the Climate First Accelerator, what sectors generate the most emissions, strong mentor and partner network at Climate First, what can founders expect to gain from the program, and lots more. So, without wasting any time, let's dive straight in. Hey Nadav, so good to have you on the VC10X podcast. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, pleasure hosting you. To start things off, can we have your story and how you started investing?
With pleasure. I'll give you the short version, but I'm happy to expand later as we discuss different topics. But I'm a French Israeli early stage climate tech investor, living in London for the past 2.5 years. Previously, my wife and I used to live in New York for over 7 years. My background is primarily in financial services and private equity. So I've used in different places, always enjoyed very much the world of investments. I've also co founded a nonprofit organization in the past. And around 2 years ago, we have launched Nomea, an early stage climate tech fund where we invest in disruptive technologies, pre seed, seed, and A, that accelerate the transition to net zero emissions. So we focus on five high emitting sectors, from manufacturing and materials to energy, ag and food, of course, the built environment, and transportation. And looking to back and help scale technologies with significant decarbonization potential. Now, at the same time, and quite recently actually, we've also launched a climate tech accelerator in Israel, which is called Climate First, which I believe is also the topic for our discussion today. And our first batch of startups will start next month, and I'm happy to discuss this as well in a few moments. But I started, just to finish up, I had several moments throughout my career that made me reflect and realize that I should consider pursue a career in climate tech. And it's a mixture of personal and professional development, but the rationale behind it was that I wanted to combine my investment skills and my passion for technology and climate change.
Right. And what were those moments that you just mentioned about that motivated you to like jump in the climate space and work here?
So I'll start with a few personal examples. So I was very privileged. I grew up in a beautiful place in Israel, right by the ocean, with beautiful landscape and nature, and I'm very thankful for that. Um, Over the years, I still go back to Israel quite often. I go with my wife, and over the years, I was able to see some of the unfortunate effects of climate change. So one example is that we used to live very close to the beach, to the ocean, the same places uh, right by the cliff where I used to sit and hang out with my siblings or my parents or my friends literally don't exist any longer because of rising sea levels. So that's one moment, where it struck you, and you realize, okay, it's tangible, it's real. Because I think one of the big challenges in climate change, that for many people it feels something very abstract and long term. So it's difficult for us as a civilization, as a society, to realize that we have to act now and that we don't have time to waste. So those personal moments can really shape your career.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very valid point that the effects of climate change will not be as immediate for people to like think, okay, this is climate change in action. But like when you see it over a longer period of time, like maybe like you were outside the country for a big part of the time, then you came back and you saw an effect that, okay, this place I was hanging out at this no longer exists because the rising sea levels, right? So you saw the impact over a longer period horizon, and that's how it can be seen. But like how, but at the same time, this problem is actually an urgent one. This is something that we need to tackle right now, or it might get too late too soon, right? So, can you talk about how urgent is this problem, and why this is something that needs a lot more attention than it still gets?
In my view, there's nothing more urgent right now on Earth than tackling climate change. It sounds like a cliche or like a buzzword, but at the end of the day, we only have one planet and we have to protect it. What happened, in our world is that for many years, for decades, we've been driving global warming. So we've been burning fossil fuels. We've been driving deforestation, and maybe for many purposes, it actually served us well as a society. So it led huge economic growth, created millions of jobs, and many other benefits. But what we're starting to realize, not just now, but years from a few years from ago, that it came with a significant cost to the environment. And this significant cost to the environment is that the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is just going up. So I don't want to bore you with too many numbers and statistics, but let me use one. Today, we're emitting about 51 billion tons of greenhouse gases every year into the atmosphere. So when we're talking about reaching net zero emissions in mid-century, in 2050, it's a huge challenge. Now, I definitely don't want to sound pessimistic, because I'm a very optimistic person in my nature. But we have to understand the magnitude of the challenge ahead of us if we want to act together and collectively.
Right, absolutely. Totally agreed. And you're someone who is investing in the space. Agreed that this is an important space. We need a lot more people working on this, like promoting a lot more solutions and getting them out there for a lot of different problems. Like this is a very broad industry, broader than maybe most people can comprehend, because there are greenhouse gases getting emitted at a lot of different places. There's carbon getting produced a lot of different places. So how do you eliminate that across different industries? So that's a huge challenge in itself, right? And we need a lot more people coming in and doing the work over here. But like as a venture backable category, how do you look at the climate tech sector as where you can invest and also get venture scale returns?
Right. So let me start actually with your first point, and then we can get to the second point, because the first one is actually very important because it's precise. We're emitting greenhouse gases in almost every activity that we do. So from what we eat, to how we move around, to how we produce things, to the electricity that we use. I mean, there's many examples. So, transitioning from a fossil fuel based economy to green energy, it's going to take a lot of new innovation, of investment, of policy, of regulation, of many new things. Now, climate tech investments is not a vertical like investing in fintech or investing in cyber. In reality, you invest across many categories. We see ourselves as climate generalists, but we're backing sustainable and scalable products that can drive decarbonization. So this can be in many different verticals and sectors that I've mentioned at the beginning: energy, materials, carbon removal, circular economy, and many others. And the idea is, let's help them scale. Let's, of course, like any other investment, focus on the unit economics, the pricing, the business model, the go-to-market strategy. But let's also look at what is the emissions reduction potential of the technology.
Yeah, absolutely. And now let's talk about the other part of the question about the venture backability of this category. So can this really produce those 10x maybe multiples that LPs kind of look for in this industry?
Right. So the opportunity is massive. Again, I said that I'm not going to use too many numbers and stats, not to bore the audience, but I'll use another one. If you read some what of the experts are producing, and some of the world leading economists, They estimate that from now until 2050, they will have to be invested around $150 trillion. Now, if you do the math, it's about $5 trillion every year for the next 30 years. So this is massive amounts of capital. Now, even if they exaggerate or they get it wrong, or maybe it will be half of what they estimate, still this magnitude of capital will create a lot of opportunities for new innovative products. Now, another reason that I think that climate tech, will generate the next generation of unicorns, and I have great confidence in this, is because that those type of solutions will be urgently needed and required by our society. So we'll have no other alternative in reality. And I think many governments, huge corporations, big companies, small companies are all starting to realize this and are pledging. We can hear about net zero commitments every day now in the news, whether you open Bloomberg or Financial Times. And the transition has already started.
Yes, absolutely. And we definitely certainly keep hearing about these terms like net zero and like carbon removal. So can you like deconstruct what these terms actually mean for maybe corporations, and what are the consequences of having these goals, maybe net zero? Then what's the next step to that? If a company or a country has set a goal that, okay, we're going to get to net zero by maybe this year, then what are going to be the next steps that they're going to take to get there?
I'm happy to. We need to give a little bit of background and context in order for some of those concepts to make sense. In reality, without going too back into history, but a couple of years ago in 2015, there was a famous Paris Accord. I believe that over 190 countries signed the agreement, and the agreement said that we're committed to limiting the rise of global temperature to 1.5 Celsius degrees. Now, this is very ambitious, and today there's many scientists who believe that it's actually not achievable. But let's put this aside. So this is the goal. Now, in order to reach that goal, we have to start to bend the emissions curve. Because right now, everybody talks about net zero emissions by 2050, but in reality, year over year, we're still producing more greenhouse gases, more carbon dioxide, more methane, and more other greenhouse gases than the previous years. So when we think, and we call it net zero and not zero, because we all understand and acknowledge that many industries in our economy will be very hard to decarbonize. I'll give two quick examples. One is everything that is related to what is called hard to abate sectors. So things in our economy that are very hard to decarbonize. One, long haul transportation will take time to decarbonize. Things like shipping, aviation, trucking. It's many areas that batteries will most likely not be sufficient. Unfortunately, I'm very passionate about batteries. But for those who are planning to take a transatlantic flight, I don't see a future in the near future that it will be able to be powered by batteries, mostly because of the energy density. The weight of the battery will be heavier than the plane itself. So we have to invest in alternative solutions like sustainable aviation fuel, green hydrogen, and other solutions. Same thing with heavy industry. So the production of cement, steel, plastic. I think that so many of us don't realize how much they are responsible for emissions. Cement by itself is about 8% of total greenhouse gases. So these two examples are areas that will be very hard to decarbonize in the next couple of decades. So we say net zero because we understand that there will be a residual of emissions that we might not be able to reduce. So the idea is that we'll also use technologies like carbon removals. So different types of ways, whether it's through direct air capture or through the ocean or through mineralization or biochar, different ways to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere and either store it underground or sell it as a byproduct. But that's the idea of net zero, reducing emissions as much as possible, and the residual trying to remove actual CO2 out of the atmosphere to reduce the concentration of greenhouse gases.
Right, absolutely. I love the way you explained it in layman terms so that everyone can understand. And now at Climate First, which is a new accelerator that you've come up with. So, what's the goal here, and how are you planning to like bring up these new companies that can help decarbonize different areas of our world?
First of all, the timing of our conversation, I'm not sure when the podcast will be released, but the timing of our conversation couldn't have been better. We've literally launched Climate First a few weeks ago. I'm personally very excited about this because I think it has tremendous potential. So this is something that I wanted to share with you. I'm very happy about that. Um, with Climate First, as you said, it's accelerator dedicated exclusively to climate. It's an 8-week program. The first batch of startups will begin end of April. In terms of content and program, we'll be focusing on climate, how to build a net zero strategy, how to think about quantifying emissions reduction, different types of impact measurements, and many other sessions related to deep tech and startups, but using examples from climate. And we have top tier experts who are going to lead those types of sessions. Now, in terms of going back to your question about our goal, let me start about our mission. Our mission is to reduce global emissions by at least 1%. So, or alternatively, about 400 million tons of greenhouse gases. So, this is a very ambitious mission. And as a result of this mission, we focus quite a lot on deep tech and hardware and on high emitting sectors. Because when we talk about net zero, we have to understand that in some areas, software will not be sufficient, and we actually have to build things. So the classic example of internal combustion engine cars versus electric vehicles, and what Elon Musk and Tesla and many others now are doing. They actually have to put together those batteries, those cars, and there's, as we can see, there's a lot of value in doing that. So, and our goal is to commercialize and scale Israeli innovation and pave its way to global markets. At the end of the program, at the end of the 8-week program, the companies will also be joining us in the UK for a roadshow to meet with the best climate tech investors, strategic partners, large multinational corporations. And UK, I don't know if you know this, but UK, it's the second largest climate tech hub. So I think they will be able to build a lot of very fruitful relationships.
Right, absolutely. It sounds like a great program. And when can founders can actually apply to the accelerator? Is it like they've already started working on the idea and then they can apply, or is it anyone who's interested in maybe building a company in that space can apply to the accelerator?
That's a very good question. It's actually it's early stage companies, but much more advanced than just an idea. So the companies who are participating in the first cohort, which we've already closed the application, but the application for the second cohort will be live in the next week or a few weeks. But the stage of the companies in terms of funding is somewhere between seed and A. So they already have a prototype, they have a team of 10, 15, 20 people working on this. They have raised already, in some cases, 2 external rounds from investors. So it's much more mature than just a presentation or just an idea. Our goal is to help them taking it from the lab to the real world, from pilots to signing big customers.
Right, absolutely. Sounds great. And you mentioned in your previous answer about the highest emitting sectors and you're focusing on those. So, what are those highest emitting sectors that are like producing the most amount of greenhouse gases that we need more innovation in those spaces?
Right. In terms of percentages and numbers, it's difficult to say because different organizations and companies, they use different statistics. I like a lot the book by Bill Gates. Have you read this?
No, I haven't read this, but it has been recommended to me multiple times and I'm going to read it.
So Bill Gates wrote a book that is called How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, and he uses a very interesting and quite simplistic, but that's the beauty in it, way of thinking about the distribution and breakdown of greenhouse gas emissions. So the way that he counts it, manufacturing is the highest emitting sector. It's about 31% of greenhouse gases. Then you have electricity and energy is about 27%. Agriculture is about 19%. Transportation 16%, and the built environment is 8%. but it really depends on how you of how you count it. In terms of our approach, we focus on technologies across all of those verticals. So in our first cohort, we have really exceptional businesses in the green hydrogen space, in carbon removal, in the heavy industry processes that I've mentioned prior to that, and many other industries. But all of them, we believe, demonstrate significant decarbonization potential.
Right, absolutely. And since it's an accelerator kind of model, so the mentors and the people who are conducting it become even more important. So, can you give us more insight into what kind of people can founders expect to meet and learn from once they join the program?
Our mentors and partners, they really play an indispensable part in our program. And we're actually very lucky and grateful to have their support, because I think they will be able to add a lot of value to the founders. So we have over 100 mentors who will be working with the companies throughout the program. Those mentors have diverse backgrounds. Some of them are climate change scientists, some of them are venture capital investors, family offices, policy makers. It's a very broad and diverse group of people, all of them committed and have the capabilities, the expertise, the knowledge to scale climate breakthroughs. And they're coming from all over the world. So even in terms of geographies, because different businesses have different go-to-market strategies, they target different markets and sectors. So they're based all over the world in many countries, and I think this is a huge value add that we can offer to the companies. Same thing with our partners. So we have several partners who are involved in our program. We haven't announced them yet, some of them, but we will be announcing them very soon. So stay tuned. Some of them are strategic players in the industry, in different industries, from energy, renewables, materials, and many other industries that are relevant for our companies in terms of becoming potential customers, driving internal innovation within their organization. But many of them are very thrilled about this opportunity to join us. They want to have access to deal flow. They want to have access to Israeli innovation, which maybe it's also a topic to discuss why we've decided to launch this in Israel. Besides, me being Israeli
Hmm.
and some of my partners,
Yeah.
but all of our partners and mentors really have a lot of value to offer, and we're very grateful for their support.
Yeah, and let's talk about the Israeli aspect as well, because Israel in itself, I know, has a very vibrant and strong startup ecosystem over there. Can you also share your thoughts on why you chose Israel as the place where this should be? Because you're yourself in UK and previously been in the US, so you could have done this anywhere practically, but you chose Israel. So what's the reason behind that?
So Israel, as many people know already, is considered to be to be startup nation because of the level of innovation, the success stories in cyber, fintech, telecom, and other industries. It's been unbelievable. Um, there's, I don't know, many, maybe a few reasons, or that or insights that I can offer to why this is the case. But it's been an unbelievable success in terms of startups, unicorns coming out of Israel over the past good number of years. In my view, again, I'm not objective because I'm a climate tech investor, but I have great confidence that if Israel was startup nation before, cyber nation later on, and then fintech nation, the next big thing will be climate tech nation. Now we are already seeing this happening, and that's also the rationale why we started Climate First. We see an unbelievable wave of talent coming into climate. A lot of second time founders who've been very successful previously, exiting big businesses, are deciding to pursue a career in climate. Not just because of the impact, but also because what have we discussed at the beginning of the podcast, because they realize there is a very big economic opportunity that they can also capitalize on that. And of course, they're also very purpose driven, and they want to accelerate the transition to net zero. So in Israel today, there's about over 750 climate tech startups, but the numbers are going to grow exponentially in the coming years. Uh, I think the younger generation care a lot about climate change, and this opportunity to work in the intersection of technology and climate change, I think it's very unique and it offers a lot of purpose as well.
Absolutely, I totally agree. It's also one of, like you said before, it's one of the greatest challenges facing humanity right now. And at the same time, there's like two sides of the coin. It's also simultaneously one of the biggest opportunities, maybe of this century. Like if you go and work there and bring up a solid solution to a big problem, then you there are big winnings out there, right? All right. So now let's move on to our quick rapid fire round, wherein I'll ask you quick questions about the investing that you're doing through uh, Climate First, and you can give quick answers. Sounds good.
Fantastic.
All right. The first one is, what are the sectors and regions you invest in?
So, in terms of climate first, we're focusing on Israeli innovation. So, it's either companies that are registered in Israel or that operate in Israel. And in terms of sectors, we're climate generalists, but we're looking for technologies with significant decarbonization potential, with a significant focus on deep tech and hardware.
What's the typical stage of investment?
It's the company that join us are somewhere between seed and A in terms of funding.
Where can founders apply to the next accelerator round?
So the best way to find us and also to fill out the application is through our website, climatefirst.vc. And the application for the second cohort will be live very soon.
Great. And last one, where can our listeners follow you?
LinkedIn would be a great way to reach out. I'm always trying to be very responsive, and I'm always happy to chat.
Great. I'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes below so that our listeners can get there easily and start working with you if possible. Thank you so much for coming on, Nadav. You're doing very important and needed work, and happy investing.
Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure hosting.